Busy with midterm examinations?
Yes. And also deal with another class. Yeah.
Yeah. Concept of contraction and expansion of the universe. Do you have enough information with regard to this topic?
I'm just start finding, yeah. Especially about the science, because I haven't clear about it now. Yeah, so.
I think basically you have to focus on this 2 points from the scientific perspective. One is this Big Bang theory. The other is probably the concept of black hole.
Big Bang theory, like, yeah.
Because a black hole is the concept that discusses about how everything is contracted or put into one single specific place, because the power of the power of black hole is so strong that it says that even the light cannot pass through, you see. So it is a kind of a compact energy, and after millions of years and billions of years, someday this black hole gets, how do you say, bursted. So when there is a burst of this black hole, then then it is called Big Bang. From there, a lot of different particles, different aspects, spread out in the space, and from there, with a long span of time, different planets are formed. So that is how this is explained. But in Buddhism, especially in the Gaya Sutta, and also I think there are a few other suttas that discuss about this Sangvatta and Vivatta. In Pali, the terms used are Sangvatta and Vivatta, contraction and distraction. So
you mean the name of Sudha or an article, or just a name, a theory?
in the Agaya Sutta, you have these two phrases, two words referring to contraction and distraction of the universe. One is called Sangvatta, the other term is Vivatta. Sangvatta and Vivatta.
Okay.
Sangvattanika, Vivattanika. So this refers to expansion and contraction of the universe. So probably, I mean, you're not probably going to have extensive discussions on this concept, but what I mean is that these concepts are present even in early Buddhist text. Maybe not in exactly the same way, but I'm not sure if we have discussed it. In Buddhist account, it says that when the contraction will take place, because in Buddhism you have these 3 planes of existence, right? Kama Loka, Rupa Loka, Rupa Loka, 31 planes of existence. And it says that all the beings from the lower realms, because the planes of existence will be destroyed or will vanish. So what about the beings? So
what about the mix?
Beings.
Okay.
So then says that all the beings from all these lower realms of existence will be reborn or will move to the Arupa Brahma world, some kind of Brahma world. So this Brahma world is said to be the place, probably it will not be destroyed or something like that. But then if you look at the term Arupa, Arupa Brahma world, that means formless. So could it be that there will be some kind of energy that will be remaining? So you can raise, some questions like that. It is not that we are going to have answers to all the questions, but we can have some questions at least.
In fact, I already sent the Zoom link to our student group. Yes, for a few minutes. Maybe some of them are busy today.
I see. In that case, I think we can slowly begin our class, and then later on probably we have to share this recorded video of the lecture. So the focus of today's class is actually, I think you all know that, an understanding of, in a way, physical reality or physics, in other words, and how science, discusses on this matter, and what is the Buddhist standpoint. We know that in science, primarily, they focus on the study and analysis of physical reality. There is not so much of discussion on mind, but even when they discuss about mind, emotions, always there is a connection with physical reality, right? For example, if you talk about thoughts, emotions, these are all connected to some kind of electromagnetic functioning of brains, right? So, for example, when you are happy, they say that there is certain part of your brain that is active, right? And that means that in some way, if this brain functioning is stopped, then you are not going to be happy anymore, right? Similarly, the other types of feelings, sadness, right, or becoming angry, becoming upset, and so on. But then the question, according to Buddhism, the question is, for example, Buddhism says that there is some other kind of reality that is called consciousness or mind. Now, and this is connected to actions, right? So when it says, for example, intention is karma. So intention is part of your consciousness. And then you perform action. And action here does not necessarily means that physical actions or verbal actions. Thoughts can be regarded as actions as well in some way, right? So as long as there is a complete intention of doing something, because it is a kind of a mental functioning that is strengthening your mental force in some way. So if you have been thinking about thinking on some bad things, then that means your mind is becoming stronger in that direction, right? So you're creating a certain kind of sankhara, bad sankhara, akusala sankhara. You are forming a kind of a habit, right? So not just Buddhism talks about karma, but it also says that every kind of karma has its counterparts, results. So when you are approaching the world and our existence in terms of just physical reality, and when you talk about all kinds of feelings and emotions or thoughts being controlled by this electromagnetic functioning of brains, and then you can, change or modify or stop a certain type of feeling to arise when you make a certain changes in the brain functionings. The question from Buddhist perspective that remains is that, can you, be free from the process of karma, for example? So I give you an example. We talk about enlightened beings in Theravada tradition. Primarily, the concept of arahant is popular, right? So it says that when somebody becomes an arahant, he is in a state of nibbana. He is free from all kinds of negativities. So there is a kind of bliss. Now, if there is a way that is discovered in scientific discovery that, and they will frame your brain in such a way that you will just feel bliss, happiness. Sorrowness will not come into your mind, right? But then the question is, would that person be then regarded, same as an arahant? You see? So in Buddhist perspective, we say that beings are, having continuous existence and re-existence throughout the samsara, unless and until he's free from all kinds of, these psychological forces. Until he's free from, his mind is free from all kinds of psychological, kusala, both types of forces, dualistic thinking. But in the case of this person who is made to feel bliss, he's not going to live forever. He's going to die one day, right? And then there is becoming again. There is rebirth again. So he's not going to be free from this samsara, because even though to some extent by using this scientific, methods and so on, you make that person feel supremely blissful right now, but that is mechanical. So the way Buddhism sees is that there is a limitation, and that is basically because science is understanding things just from the perspective of physical reality alone. The functioning of mind, which is said to be the bigger reality, that is in a way avoided, or how do you say, neglected, right? So we all know that we have a mind. Even the scientists also know. But the problem is, how do we know which part of our being, our existence, can be regarded as a mind? That is the problem, right? So even in Buddhism, and as a specific locality or location is not discussed, it's not found. For example, there is a verse in the Dhammapada that says that Ekacharam Asariram Guhasayam. I forgot the entire verse, but the meaning of this verse is that mind is something that is present in us, that does not have any physical form, that can be, regarded all over your body, that can be present in every part of your existence, but it does not have its own physicality, and it can travel, a long distance without any barrier or anything. So for example, you are here, your mind can travel to your home country, right? Your mind can bring back the childhood memory. You are not really physically going back to, your childhood, right? But when you feel this, when your memories become active, It feels like you are in that moment, right? And then what about dreams? What about dreams? Is it just merely a certain functioning of brains? So, according to Buddhism, mind and body, they are interdependent, mutually dependent. One is not without the other. Okay, you cannot really separate mind from the body, or you cannot say that mind exists in the body only. Then what about that person, right? They have a complete physical body. Why their mind is not functioning, right? So in a way, it is very difficult to really understand and map out, right? But the point of our discussion today is that how scientists and Buddhists look at physical reality or physics in general, and then the advanced development in the scientific study of physics is said to be quantum physics or quantum mechanics, right? So we'll look at that. So I prepared some slides. I'm going to share the screen, and then we will have our discussions. Yeah, can you see my computer screen?
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah, so, okay. Let us look at the slides. Okay, so general remarks. Now, this is according to physics. So it says that there is a unified set of laws governing matter, motion, and energy at a small microscopic subatomic distances at the human macroscopic scale of everyday life, and out to the largest distances, for example, those on the extragalactic scale. So this is in science. They, have this idea that there is a certain kind of unified set of laws governing everything. Okay, the real existence may be atoms or subatoms, also regarded as a type of energy or force. The functioning of the entire cosmos rests on this force. So these are, for example, the terms that they use. The smallest particle, the building blocks of the entire universe, can be called atoms or subatoms. They also call it a certain type of energy or force, right? Based on which everything is really functioning. The body of physics developed up to about the turn of the 20th century, known as classical physics, can largely account for the motions of macroscopic objects that move slowly with respect to the speed of light, and for such phenomena as heat, sound, electricity, magnetism, and light. Modern developments of relativity and quantum mechanics modify these laws insofar as they apply to higher speeds, very massive objects, and to the tiny elementary constituents of matter, such as electrons, protons, and neutrons. So you have the physical reality. Now, for example, if you talk about how all these different planets are moving around, right? Because literally they are in the air, right? But then what is it that is actually connecting one planet to the other planet or to the sun, right? In the galactic system. there is some kind of force that is functioning. And so this is in a bigger way, but in a smaller sense, they're trying to find out what is the fundamental constituents, what is the basics of this existence. For example, if you are talking about a human body or any kind of being, anything, if you analyze, what do you really find as the basics of existence, right? Because otherwise, for example, if there are some static things, it is like you have, as a certain number of bricks, if you want to make a wall. So you put all the bricks together and then you have this wall, right? And this wall doesn't become smaller or bigger. It remains as it is unless it is broken or some part of it is damaged, right? But in the case of beings, for example, or any living or non-living things, non-living things here means trees and so on, even though, even in Buddhist perspective, it says that there is some kind of sensation there, So these things, they grow, right? So when things are growing, changing, it itself suggests that there is nothing static there, right? So in a smaller level, the discussion is focusing on this functioning of subatomic particles, okay, how they function together to form the basics of existence. Real existence are fundamental blocks of existence and science and Buddhism. Now this is here what you see is inside an atom. So this is said to be an atom. Inside an atom there is some other actions that is taking place. Nucleus, electrons, this orbit. So they are circling around, right? And that is how you have this atom. So these are subatomic particles. According to science, it is a type of material force or energy that controls everything from man to the cosmos. Matter in science is something that has mass and occupies a space. It is either a mixture of different substances or pure substance, just a single type. Okay, mixture can be homogeneous or heterogeneous. So there can be a similar type of subatomic particles, and there can be some different types. Pure substance is of two types: elements, that is atoms, and compound, molecules. So the question is, what is our body made up of? Now you can look at it from different angles. If you look at the bigger parts, different parts in your body, you can say that it is made up of different organs, such as your heart, lungs, stomach, right? That work together to keep your body going. Or many different types of cells or atoms, often organized into larger structure called molecules. So as an incredibly complex being made up of roughly this number of atoms. So this is the counting they provide, you see. This is the number they provide. So this much of atoms are functioning in your body. Atoms and molecules follow the rules of chemistry and physics, even when they are part of a complex, living, breathing being. Some atoms tend to gain or lose electrons or more bonds with or form bonds with each other. Those facts remain true even when the atoms or molecules are part of a living thing. In fact, simple interactions between atoms, played out many times and in many different combinations in a single cell or a larger organism, are what make life possible. One could argue that everything you are including your consciousness, is the byproduct of chemical and electrical interactions between a very, very large number of non-living atoms. So this is, in a way, the summary of all these discussions. Even not just the physical parts, but even the consciousness says that is a byproduct of chemical and electrical interaction between a very, very large number of non-living atoms. Now, I think some of you are familiar with the Theravada Abhidhamma, or Abhidhamma tradition in general, that in the Abhidhamma discussion, they talk about different numbers of dharmas as the fundamental blocks of existence, right? In Theravada Abhidhamma, for example, there are 89 types of chittas, and then 52 chetasikas, mental factors, and 28 types of rupa dhammas, right? Similarly, in science, there is a discussion of elements as well. Now, the elements is one English term that is used to refer to dhamma or dharma in the Abhidhamma. The term matter refers to anything that occupies space and has mass. In other words, the stuff that the universe is made of. All matter is made up of substances called elements, which have specific chemical and physical properties and cannot be broken down into other substances through ordinary chemical reactions. Gold, for instance, is an element, and so is carbon. So there are altogether 118 elements, but only 92 occur naturally. The remaining elements have only been made in laboratories and are unstable. So these are the scientific, names of all these elements. So these are said to be the building blocks of the physical reality, according to science. The structure of the atom. An atom is the smallest unit of matter that retains all of the chemical properties of an element. For example, a gold coin is simply a very large number of gold atoms molded into the shape of a coin, with small amounts of other contaminating elements. Gold atoms cannot be broken down into anything smaller while still retaining the properties of gold. A gold atom gets its properties from the tiny subatomic particles it is made up of. An atom consists of two regions. The first is a tiny atomic nucleus, which is in the center of the atom and contains positively charged particles called protons and uncharged particles called neutrons. So two things are present there. One is called protons, the other is neutrons, having two different characteristics. One is positively charged, the other is neutral and uncharged. The second, much larger region of the atom is a cloud of electrons, negatively charged particles that orbit around the nucleus. The attraction between the positively charged protons and negatively charged electrons holds the atom together. Most atoms contain all three of these types of subatomic particles: protons, electrons, and neutrons. So protons and electrons having exactly opposite characteristics. One is positively charged and the other is negatively charged, while neutrons is uncharged and it's a neutral aspect of it. But in most of the atomic most of the atoms, these three subatomic particles are present. The four elements common to all living organisms are oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen, which together make up about 96% of the human body. In the non-living world, elements are found in different proportions, and some elements common to living organisms are relatively rare on the Earth as a whole. All elements and the chemical reactions between them obey the same chemical and physical laws, regardless of whether they are a part of the living or non-living world. So these are the understanding in science. Now, here is a small video clip showing how an atom is made up of and how it functions. Yes, I got your presentation video clip. I will play it probably after we finish going through this PPT. So let me play this video clip quickly. Can you see this video?
Stated Clearly presents What are atoms made of? As we learned in the last animation, the word atom means uncuttable, and when John Dalton first discovered evidence that atoms exist, he gave them that name because he genuinely thought that they were uncuttable. He thought they were fundamental particles, the smallest bits of matter that exist. Well, it turns out that he was wrong. Atoms can be split apart. They are made of subatomic particles, most importantly, electrons, protons, and neutrons. Protons and neutrons appear to be made of smaller particles still, and truth be told, we don't know for sure if there really is an end to smallness. Reality might just keep going on forever and ever the further you zoom in. So, there's something strange to think about. This image was made of data collected from an actual scan of a single nitrogen atom fixed to a metal surface. What we're actually seeing here is the outside of what is called the electron cloud, the outer edges of the atom. The colors here are artificial, but this is the real shape of a nitrogen atom. Here to the right, we see a simplified model of the same nitrogen atom. This type of model is called the Bohr model, named after the physicist Niels Bohr. Other models do exist which are more accurate, but when first being introduced to chemistry, the Bohr model is the easiest to make sense of, and so it's what we will be using here. In the center of a nitrogen atom, we have the nucleus. Looking over at the scan, you might think that the red section is the nucleus. That's actually not the case. As mentioned, the colors here are artificial. The red pixels are just the part of the electron cloud that's closest to us. The nucleus is hiding underneath the electrons. It is the core of the atom. And in our model, the nucleus has been dramatically enlarged so that we can actually see it. If the model were actually drawn more to scale, the entire nucleus would be smaller than a single pixel on your screen. In fact, if we were to enlarge the atom to the size of a professional soccer field, well, actually the size of 10 professional soccer fields, the nucleus would be about the size of a house spider. The nucleus consists of one or more protons, and in most atoms, a collection of neutrons. Protons and neutrons are what give the atom most of its weight, or its mass, technically. For example, a gold atom has 79 protons and typically 118 neutrons. This is far heavier than a nitrogen atom, which only has 7 protons and usually 7 neutrons. The number of neutrons in a particular type of atom might vary between individuals. For example, while most nitrogen atoms have 7 neutrons, some have just 6, while others have 8. Changing the number of neutrons inside of an atom won't really do much to change its chemical properties. Instead, it will often just make the atom slightly heavier, slightly lighter, or sometimes it will make the atom unstable. On the other hand, if you were to add or subtract just a single proton from nitrogen, assuming you had the technology to do so, you would completely change its chemical properties. So much, in fact, that we would no longer call it nitrogen. Adding just a single proton to a nitrogen atom would transform it into an oxygen atom. Taking a proton away from nitrogen would transform it into carbon. In other words, the number of protons an atom contains determines the type of atom it is. When you look at the periodic table, you find that each element has a number. Hydrogen is number 1, nitrogen is number 7, gold is number 79. This number tells you how many protons a single atom of that element contains. Protons are positively charged, neutrons are neutral. Obviously, they don't actually have little faces on them, but it helps to remember. Electrons, on the other hand, are negatively charged. We often depict them as little particles in orbit around the nucleus, similar to planets orbiting a sun, but this is not technically accurate. Scientists tell us that electrons can be best described as wave functions. Cloud-like structures that sort of resemble the energy force fields you might find in a science fiction movie. That said, for our purposes today, the simplified model actually works best. In general, the number of electrons an atom contains is equal to the number of protons in its nucleus. This is because each positively charged proton attracts one negatively charged electron. Through chemical reactions, however, an electron can sometimes be stripped away from an atom, or an extra electron can sometimes be added. In these cases, we call the modified atom an ion. Okay, that was a lot of information thrown at you in a very short amount of time, so let's just recap here and summarize the most important bits. What exactly are atoms made of? In the center of an atom, we find one or more protons, and in most cases, we also find neutrons. Protons are positively charged, neutrons are neutral. The number of protons an atom contains determine the type of atom it is. Hydrogen has 1 proton, nitrogen has 7, gold has 79, and so on. Orbiting about the nucleus, we find negatively charged electrons. In general, the number of electrons an atom contains is equal to the number of protons in its nucleus. This is because each positively charged proton attracts one negatively charged electron. I am John Perry, and that was a basic overview of the anatomy of an atom stated clearly.
Yes. So a few things mentioned here, I think, are very, very important. One is, of course, the discussion is focused on how atom functions and, the characteristic of atom that is defined based on the, presence and absence of a particular number of electrons or, protons in that atom, right? And you see that in the periodic table that is shown, different aspect of it represent different numbers, right? So now I will, just for the sake of comparison, I will show you an Abhidhamma table. So this is how it looks. So as I have mentioned to you earlier that in the Theravada Abhidhamma, you have 4 fundamental, reality. 2 of them are Chitta and Chetasika, right? Consciousness and mental factors. Now, realities are explained in the Abhidhamma in terms of momentary dhammas, right? So if when you take up one mind moment, so there are 89 chittas are discussed. So what it means is that basically the chitta is one actually, but it can take 89 different forms or different shape or form in different mind moment. Now, if you are talking about Lobamula Chitta, there are 8 Lobamula Chittas, right? So in this mind moment, for example, how many Chetasikas are present? So you see that 19 Chetasikas are present and they have different names. There are 7 universals. So in this, there are 7, not just 1. right? And they are always present. And then you have 6 pakinnaka, they are called pakinnaka, vitakka, vichara, adhimukha, viriya, piti, chanda. And then yeah, these are unwholesome dharmas. Akusala, there are 4: lobha, ditthi, mana, and dosa is isarya, these are absent, right? Which is and this belong to beautiful mental factors, and these are also absent, right? But again, if you look at one of the mind moment of a higher being, right? For example, when somebody is in jhana, so all these universals and pakinnakas that are present, and also the beautiful ones, all these negative ones are not there, right? So you have 35 dhammas in one mind moment. So not exactly, how do you say, so it is called cognition, or one moment of cognitive mind. So this could be regarded as sub cognitive aspect of that mind moment, of that moment. Okay, so just as you have atom and subatomic particles, so this is in the Abhidhamma analysis. Okay, and similarly you have the analysis of Rupa Dhammas as well. Yeah, so this is a little bit about atom and subatomic particles. So Buddhist view of the real existence, so it is called dharma, right? And then this represent the purpose of why these Abhidhammikas, or this Buddhist masters, they are regarded as kind of a philosophers. Actually, the practitioners and philosophers, they came up with this idea. So it says that it arose from the need to make sense out of experiences in meditation, and was designed as a guide for meditative contemplation and insight. So 2 aspects I mentioned here. One is that this number of dharmas and how this cognitive process really takes place, right? It is something that these meditators came up with, because they have gone through this experience, and then from their experience they came up with these ideas and provided explanations. That is one way of looking at it. The other is that the reason for them to come up with these ideas is to make people understand the deeper reality, okay, the original reality of existence, so that they can really have an insight into that, and make use of this understanding in their own practice. Okay. The Buddha had taught that to perceive the world correctly is to see not self-entities and substances, but bare phenomena arising and perishing in accordance with their conditions. Okay, so there is some kind of similarity that we find in our discussion of scientific understanding of how atoms and subatomic particles are particles function. At one point, if you remember the video clip, it says that it seems like there is no end to there is no end to the analysis and divisions that they are approaching, because they do not really find anything solid there as you go further and further into the analysis. Okay, the task the Abhidhamma specialists set themselves was to specify exactly what these bare phenomena are, and to show how they interact with other bare phenomena to make up our common sense picture of the world. Yeah. So in the Suttanta, you have all this analysis In terms of Namarupa, 5 aggregates, 12 ayatanas, 18 dhatus, you are all familiar with this. The purpose is to point out dependent origination and non-self nature of phenomenal existence, because everything is impermanent. Grasping them as real existence would result in dukkha. So what it says is that what you see actually are like a kind of bubbles. All our experiences, all our knowledge with regard to our existence and experiences are like bubbles. The fundamental reality is that there is nothing solid there. Yeah, so these are just the discussion on two methods, analysis and synthesis. So what we see in the scientific understanding also, it represents both. First, analysis, right, into atoms and different number of elements, 118 number of elements, and then their combinations, how they function. So that is synthesis. Yeah, so basically what it says in Buddhism is that how things arise and cease. This is the idea that is present. Ahutva sambunti, hutva pativanti. This is a very important theory in Abhidhamma. Having not been, they come into being. Having been, they cease to be. Okay, so there is a kind of understanding of emptiness that is present here, right? So emptiness seems to be the source of everything, even in the analysis of dharmas. This is a kind of a further exposition with regard to Rupa Dhamma especially. These are the 28 Rupa Dhammas that are mentioned in the Abhidhamma. Patavi, earth, water, fire, air, organ of sight, chakku, organ of hearing, organ of smell, organ of taste, organ of touch, the objective sense fields with the exception of tangible, visible, sound, smell, taste, 3 faculties of femininity, masculinity, material faculty of vitality, heart base, nutriment, space element, bodily intimation, vocal intimation, lightness of matter, malleability of matter, wildness of matter, production of matter, continuity of matter, decaying of matter, impermanence of matter. So in the Abhidhamma literature, you have a discussion of atom as well, or paramanu. The word used is anu and paramanu. A material dhamma is normally postulated as if it were a discrete entity. However, this does not mean that it has an independent and isolated existence. It is entirely for the convenience of definition and description that it is so postulated, for it always exists in inseparable association with a set of other material dhammas. Even when the analysis of matter ended in atomism theory of Rupa Kalapa, this principle of positional inseparability was not abandoned, for even the so-called atom, paramanu, is in the final analysis a cluster of material dhammas, Rupa Kalapa, one physical inseparable from another, all forming a heterogeneous unity. So in the Abhidhammic understanding, basically there is a discussion of heterogeneous unity. It is the Rupa Kalapa. When you talk about an atom, it is not just one single atom. An atom is made up of so many aspects of Rupa. So it is called a cluster of material dhammas, a combination of a lot of material dhammas. So what I'm trying to show you is that there is a similar kind of concept. That's all. It may not be exactly the same, of course, but there is similar kind of concept. An atom is the smallest Rupa. It cannot be cut, broken, penetrated. Okay, so this is the idea Buddhism. It cannot be taken up, abandoned, ridden on, stepped on, struck, or dragged. It is neither long nor short, square nor round, regular nor irregular, convex nor concave. It has no smaller parts. It cannot be decomposed, cannot be seen, heard, smelled, touched. It is thus that the Paramanu is said to be the finest, Sarva Sukshma of all Rupas. 7 of these Paramanus constitute an Anu. So in an Anu, you have 7 Paramanu. 7 Anus constitute a Tamra Rajas. 7 Tamra Rajas constitute an Aparajas. 7 Aparajas constitute a Shasharajas. 7 Shasharajas constitute an Edakarajas. 7 Edakarajas constitute a Gorajas. 7 Gorajas constitute a Vatanaya Rajas. In this way, the whole physical universe is composed. So this is the description that is present in Buddhist text. Now there is the numbers are also present. So this is how it is said. You see, Vibhanga, and you have further numbering. Now this is basic octet, material cluster, and how many subatomic particles or constituents are present in one anu or one atom. So it is wonderful that they came up with these numbers. Okay, so as a concluding remark, it should be said that more than 99% of the visible matter in the universe is built from protons and neutrons and the nuclei that they form. This rich structure emerges dynamically from the complex interactions of quarks and gluons, the most elementary particles that have been discovered. Understanding how nuclear physics arises from the underlying quarks and gluon dynamics is the computational challenge that pushes the capabilities of the world's largest supercomputers. Now, there is some other thing that I wanted to show you from this book, Buddhism and Science by Buddhadasapi Kirti Singhe, with regard to Buddhism and nuclear physics. So as a concluding remarks, it says that things exist in a state of relation to one another and not independently. There is no independent existence of anything, even the minute aspects of our existence. Things interact on one another and are changing every instant. And this 1 and 2 above show that the state of reality is 4-dimensional and that its properties are beyond our imagination. Scientific and philosophical theories give us only projections of reality. The direct source of knowledge is experience. Subjective experience with the ego as the center of observation gives us a false conception of reality. The motive force, which causes this seemingly irresistible tendency to misunderstand, is called karma in Buddhism. So if you remember at the beginning of our lecture, I have been talking about the functioning of karma and its result, and also attainment of arahanthood or enlightenment, and the scientific analysis of one's existence and controlling one's intellectual capabilities or emotions, right? So what this author is trying to tell us here is that what is lacking probably in science is direct experience, right? So because everything is looked at as an object of analysis, object of study. And one important point that is mentioned here is that as long as there is this ego identity in the observer, one is never going to have real understanding of the reality of existence. So that is basically the idea here. The elusive perception of the universe, and especially of a self that is independent, causes suffering to every creature. The variation of suffering is governed by the law of cause and effect. and works naturally. As a matter of course, they believe in a god or any supernatural being who governs this world. All anthropomorphizing is just phantasmic. The way to get rid of karmic disturbance is the path to nirvana, which consists of moral training, observance of precepts, etc., and psychological training, concentration, meditation, contemplation, etc., as taught in Buddhism. So clearly, this author is trying to focus on Buddhist way of, progressing in the spirituality and understanding the reality of existence. True knowledge, the aim of philosophy, and various conduct, the aim of ethics, are merely two branches of the one tree of reality. Or they may be compared to the two wheels of the chariot that takes a man to nirvana. To the truth seeker, right knowledge is the microscope, training is the experiment, and the whole universe a perfect laboratory. The teaching of the Buddha furnishes all that a seeker of truth needs to learn and to follow. So this is the concluding remark of this author in this text. So this is a little bit about physics in rupa dhamma, or fundamental blocks or fundamental reality with regard to the existence of being and physical reality. Okay, so this is the first part of our discussion, and now, as we agreed upon, that we will be having your presentations in our classes from now on. So today, Mr. Sami will be presenting. He sent me his, recorded video clip of presentation. So I will be playing that video clip now. So you will be listening to his presentation, and then if you have any questions or remark, you can put forward.
Namo Buddhaya. Hello teacher, and hello fellow students. Today's presentation is about kappa and the unit of speed. It's called light years, and I will start to present kappa first. So kappa, which in Sanskrit, the etymology is coming from the word clip. From that word clip, we got the word kalpa, and then it became kappa in Pali. So that is regarding the etymology of the word. And regarding the definition, I will start with a brief definition. In Hinduism, kalpa is very similar to the concept of kappa in Buddhism. It's a unit of time, so unit to measure time. Basically, it's about 4.32 billion years, and that is the equivalent of 1 day of Brahma, or the Brahma realm. So if one day of Brahma passed by, then 4.32 billion years would have passed on Earth, which happens to be around 1,000 Mahayugas, which are separated into 14 Manvantara periods, each of which is 72 yuga. Like the Matsya Purana lists the names of 30 kalpas, and those 30 kalpas, they represent 30 days of the month of Brahma. So here the timing is from the Brahma time, So the concept of time itself in Hinduism and Buddhism is relative to where you are in the universe, which is also coincides somehow with the theory of relativity of Einstein. So if you are on the human realm, the time progression is one thing, but if you go, let's say, to space, like Einstein said, he sent one twins into the space, and one he kept them here on Earth. Then that twin will come back, and the other twin will have gained 15 years, but that twin will still remain at his age the day he left Earth. So this relativity of time is also present in the dharmic religions like Hinduism and Buddhism. So 1 month of Brahma means already on this earth 30 kappas have passed by. Okay, so in Buddhism, like I said, kalpa has become kappa, and it is mentioned in the oldest scripture, the Sutta Nipata, about this kappa. So this concept goes way back to the very first discourses that the Buddha gave. Some would argue that this concept was borrowed or even taken from Hinduism, but from the Buddhist point of view, this concept was validated by the Buddha's experience, by his ability, by his third eye ability to see all the universes, to see the different time periods. So it was not borrowed from Hinduism, but it was instituted by the Buddha through his own practice, through his own supranormal vision, which we call the third eye, Dibba Chakku in Pali. So it is also mentioned in this Sutta Nipata about the word kapatita, which means someone who has went beyond time. In other words, an arahant. So that word has been mentioned in many places in many different ways, and it basically denotes the concept of time, going beyond time. And it is also mentioned that incalculable numbers of Buddhas have lived in past kappas, and we even know the exact number of kappas, how long ago they lived. Like Vipassi Buddha, he lived 91 kappas ago, Sikhi Buddha 31 kappas, and there were 3 prior Buddhas to the Shakyamuni Buddha in this current kappa, and there is 1 more Buddha to come in this kappa. So total of 5 Buddhas in this kappa, which is why they call it the lucky kappa or the blessed kappa, because there is no other kappa where more than 5 Buddhas will come. So in an attempt to explain kappa, because many people were asking the Buddha, and he could not give an exact number because of it's beyond numbers. That's why they say innumerable, incalculable. The Buddha said, even though during that time they had very good level of arithmetic, and the Buddha, we know he was educated in arithmetic, but he always chose to give an example, a simile, when he was asked about kappa. So this simile, one of them, it goes like this. Were a man to take a piece of cloth, this most delicate texture, like fine cotton or silk, and therewith to touch in the slightest possible manner, once in 100 years, a solid rock free from earth, a yojana being 14 miles, a yojana high and as much broad, the time would come when it be worn down by this imperceptible trituration to the size of a mung or undu seed. This period would be immense in its duration, but it has been declared by the Buddha that it would not be equal to a Mahakalpa. So this simile is about the time of a Mahakalpa, which we will see later. It is the greatest unit of kalpa. There are different levels of kalpa, and we will explore them. It is also interesting to mention about in the Vibhanga division of the Abhidhamma, there are 16 Rupa Brahma Lokas and 4 higher Arupa Loka. So why these are important for the topic of kappa is because when we attain those lokas through our attainment of the jhana, it is described how each of these lokas have a specific duration in kappas. For example, the first jhana, it leads to the 3 lowest rupa loka. So every jhana will lead to 3 lokas, because every jhana we can be beginner in that jhana, we can be intermediate, and we can be very skilled in that jhana, or otherwise we'll go very deeply. So these 3 levels correspond to the birth and the rupa loka, the 3 lowest rupa loka. The first one consecutively being 1/3 of a kappa, the duration of the lifespan. The second one, half of a kappa, and the third rupa loka is duration of life is 1 kappa. So after 1 kappa, these beings who are reborn there in that deva realm, they will also die. The second jhana will also lead to the 3 higher rupa lokas, respectively 2 kalpa, 4 kalpa, and 8 kalpa. The third jhana will lead to 3 more higher rupa lokas, 16 kalpas, 32 and 64 kalpa. And the fourth jhana will lead to the 7 highest rupa lokas, with a lifespan between 500 kalpa to 16,000. And it will also lead to the 4 arupa loka, with a lifespan of 20,000 for the first arupa loka, second arupa loka 40,000 kalpas, third one 60,000, and the fourth one 80,000 kalpas. So these are for the arupa ones, which have the longest duration of lifespan. And as we said, those years are also measured differently, because up there the time is slower. Over here, so 1 day there is like already our whole lifespan has passed. So we also know that at the termination of each kalpa, the lower realms, anything that is attained that is lower than the first jhana realms, all of these get destroyed. So basically the rupa realms get destroyed by fire, or they actually get destroyed by wind or water. But this kalpa itself, it will get destroyed by fire, as the Buddha described that it will get destroyed by 7 suns that will arise consecutively until everything, even the mountains, are burned down. Then we will go through a period of non-existence of these worlds, and then again the world will come into being. So it is also explained, there are in different modality to explain the kalpas. So this one explains that there are 4 different kind of kalpa. The first one is called the regular kalpa, which is 16 million years. The second one is a small kalpa, which is 1,000 regular kalpas. A third one, medium kalpa, which is 20 small kalpas. And the fourth one is the great kalpa, or the mahakalpa, and it's 4 medium kalpas. Another important thing to notice is the expansion of the cosmos, which is the stage that we are in right now. Even scientifically, it has been proven that now the universe is still expanding. So this period of expansion of the cosmos is called in Pali the Vivattakappa. So we are currently living in that, and as I mentioned earlier, there will be a time where the lower worlds will be destroyed and all the beings will take birth in the Arupa Brahma realm until the world again starts to sort of like the whole, you can say the Big Bang will happen and the world will start to expand again, and then beings start to be reborn according to their karma. So the period of the contraction of the universe, where it contracts until it disappears, is called the Samvatta Kappa. So these two names are important to keep in mind. And there are many models according to which astronomers try to explain the movement within the universe in time. One of them is the cycloidal oscillating model, according to which the universe expands and contracts until, as Professor Bonner says, the contraction slows down, ceases, and changes to expansion again. This theory is currently favored by many astronomers in the light of recent findings. So, as we can see in a comparative study between the Western scientific astronomical point of view and the Buddhist point of view, is that it's the same. We have this expansion and contraction of the universe, and it might be interesting to note that in the Western astronomical point of view, there is no mention of that period of disappearance of the universe. But in Buddhism, it is mentioned there's a period of complete dissolution of all the lower worlds. Only the Arupa Brahmas are remaining, which are Arupa. That's why they are remaining, because they don't have a physical body like us. So we can say they are made of mentality only. There's no materiality, there's no rupa, hence arupa. But anyway, whatever is mentioned in the science, we can see how it is fits into the Buddhist cosmological point of view. So we have spoken about the relativity of time in different parts of the universe, how one day in the Brahma is equivalent to between 50 to 1,600 years, depending where you are. So I give a little example again. For example, a dog's age is only 10 years, while a human being's age is up to 100 years. So likewise, whenever you are going down in the whole, the whole hierarchy of beings according to Buddhism, the time will get less for them. The more higher you go, the time will be more, and the speed of that life is slower. So they get to enjoy more and get to enjoy it for a longer time. But ultimately, one thing in common is that all these beings will eventually die. And that's why we see that the Buddha never favors birth in the Deva or the Brahma realms. He always encouraged people to seek for Nibbana, because that is the only, the only state where there is no time, where you are beyond time. There's no more birth and death. So now we come to the other section of the this presentation about the light year. And as we already mentioned about the scientific view, we have yet to mention a little bit about the light year. The light year is a large unit of length. And here I would like to emphasize length, because most people think light year is a unit of time. But actually it's a unit of length or distance that can be measured. And that measurement that the science has gave us in astronomy is equivalent to 9.46 trillion kilometers, or 9.46 times 10 to the 12 kilometers. That's the equation for a light year. So it's a distance that we measure, distance between here, let's say Earth, and the other planets or the sun or wherever in the universe. So this distance that light travels in a vacuum is in 1 Julian year. A Julian year is basically 365 days. So this light year is that. This is how we measure it. The distance, we measure the distance that light travels in a vacuum in 1 year. That's why we call it light year. But not to misunderstand it as a unit of time. It's still, even we call it light year, it's still a unit of distance, of length. So with maybe I should make a little comparison between the light year and the kappa. So the kappa is a unit of time, and the light year is a unit of measurement. See, they don't exactly overlap as far as I can see it. They are quite different in the sense that we use kappa to tell how much time. For example, every bodhisattva requires 4 asankhyeya kappas and 1,000 eons to become a Buddha. That's the reason for the purpose in Buddhist cosmology to use the word kappa. And to explain how long this universe will last and how long the beings will last before they die, we also use this word kappa. But for light year, we are measuring the distance between the planets, how long it will take us, for example, to get from here to Mars, from here to the sun. It is measured in light years. So I hope this presentation has been well researched and well explained. And if there are any questions, you can please forward them to me, and I will be happy to explain them. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Sami, for your nice presentation. Is there any question or remark for Mr. Sami? Does anyone have any question?
No question.
Yeah, I think you have made a good presentation, even though I feel that the discussion on the light years was very brief compared to the kalpa, right? But yeah, the way you have presented, or you have viewed these two things in terms of the unit of time and also, you know, space. I think it is, I mean, a complex topic again to discuss, because in some cases people view, you know, time and space to be just, you know, different representation of the same thing. So there are some discussions with regard to that. But the way you are, you know, showing from the Buddhist perspective when talking about kalpa, for example, that yeah, there is a kind of, you know, time that is somehow understood, whereas in the case of light years, the particular focus is on distance. And I think that is so. Well done on your presentation, and you are writing your essay on this topic as well, right? So
Yes, teacher. Thank you.
yeah, so that would be, I think, okay. And the next week we are going to have a presentation from Grace, I guess, in the next class.
Just a question here, clarification for future presentations. Do you give like marks if someone gives actually like a PowerPoint presentation at the same time of the recording, or is that irrelevant?
My understanding is that during the class, I mean, if you have prepared PowerPoint presentation during the class, you can share your PowerPoint and then make your presentation. That is also possible. But what you have done is also okay. But in your presentation, for example, there is no PowerPoint or anything. So that way, sometimes it becomes a bit difficult for everyone to follow. If you are recording also, if you prepare some PowerPoint, that is, I think, better. Yeah. So both options are open. Those of you who want to make recorded presentation, that is also okay. But if you want to make the presentation during the class, it is also possible. Okay, I think now we are supposed to have a break for some times, and we meet after the break, and we will go through this article that I sent to you, together. We'll read it through together. Okay, see you after the break.
Okay, teacher.
Okay, let us resume our class. So we have been discussing about physics and the Buddhist understanding of real existence today. And as I was saying, we are supposed to go through this essay that I sent to you, to everyone, on Buddhism and quantum physics. This article is written by Christian Thomas Cole. I found that this article is very well written, comparing Buddhist and scientific understanding of real existence. Particularly, the author in this article focused on the concept of emptiness by Nagarjuna. So I hope that after going through this article, we have a substantial understanding on the concept from both perspective, Buddhism and science. I'll share my computer screen first. Yeah, so this is the article. Buddhism and quantum physics, a strange parallelism of two concepts of reality. So here you have an abstract to the article, and it says that Rudyard Kipling, the famous English author of the Jungle Book, born in India, wrote one day these words: "Oh, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet." In my paper, I show that Kipling was not completely right. I try to show the common ground between Buddhist philosophy and quantum physics. There is a surprising parallelism between the philosophical concept of reality articulated by Nagarjuna and the physical concept of reality implied by quantum physics. For neither is there a fundamental core to reality. Rather, reality consists of systems of interacting objects. Such concepts of reality cannot be reconciled with the substantial, subjective, holistic, or instrumentalistic concepts of reality that underlie modern modes of thought. So he made it very clear, especially in his last two statements here. That in both Buddhism and science, when talking about real existence or reality, both agree on the idea that there is no fundamental core. To reality. Rather, reality consists of systems of interacting objects. Okay, so yeah, so this is something that I think probably we need to really think about, so that we have a kind of at least a general understanding of the concept. Because what happens is that, for example, if you look at this expression here, reality consists of systems of interacting objects, you may have some question with regard to this, this term objects as well, right? What are these objects? The question is, and if it says that everything is actually occurring or taking place out of nothing, so everything is arising out of nothing, then there is other question that how is it possible that something comes to exist from nothing? And all this is because we have a certain understanding of what does it mean by objects, okay, and what it means by nothingness, and what it means by something. So we are always regulated by these concepts and thoughts, and therefore we face a kind of a difficulty in understanding what these authors or these theorists are trying to tell us when they say that there is no fundamental core to the reality, and what you call reality is a representation of an interaction of multiple causes and conditions. So he makes it very clear here that he's approaching this concept from all this perspective, showing that these different concepts, substantial, objective, holistic, or instrumentally concepts of reality, do not really represent the real, true nature of existence. So you can approach this topic from all these different perspectives, and he's going to examine all these different perspectives and comparing these thoughts, these ideas, with the concept of emptiness of Nagarjuna. So in the beginning, he provides this discussion with regard to Nagarjuna's concept of reality. Let us read it together. Nagarjuna was the most significant Buddhist philosopher of India. According to Atine Lamoti, he lived in the second part of the 3rd century after Christ. His philosophy is of great topical interest. Right to this day, it determines the thinking of all the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. We have no assured biographical knowledge about him, other than various legends that I will not enter into here. The authenticity of 13 of his works is nevertheless regarded as established by the scholastic research. The Danish scholar Lindner was particularly concerned with the examination and translation of these 13 works. Nagarjuna's main work, Mula Madhyamaka Karika, shortly it is called MMK, is translated into German, English, French, and other European languages. Nagarjuna is the founder of the philosophical school Madhyamaka order, middle way. The middle way indicates a spiritual and philosophical path that aspires to avoid extreme metaphysical concepts, particularly the concepts of substantial and subjective thinking in their various forms. In his main work, The Middle Way, is described as follows: what arises dependently, Aditya Samutpada, is pronounced to be substancelessness, Shunyata. This is nothing but a dependent concept, Prajnapti. Substancelessness, Shunyata, constitutes the middle way. So this is one of the important words in his text. So basically here you have some description with regard to Nagarjuna and his works and his main focus, in Buddhist philosophical system. Particularly here, there is a mention of 13 of his important works, but it says that he actually composed around 100 texts. But probably many of them are not available. Only the names probably are available. And one of the most, popular text is this one, Mula Madhyamika Karika, and it has been translated into so many different languages. So this is his main idea that is presented here. He says that what arises dependently. So, whenever you talk about arising of things, you have to keep in mind that origination takes place only dependently. There is no independent origination of anything. Okay, so dependent origination, that is Pavitra Samutpada, and it is pronounced to be substanceless, Shunyata, empty. And this is nothing but a dependent concept, Prajnapti. So this is just a concept. And what it means is that, when talking about Shunyata, substancelessness or emptiness, you have to consider it as one of the concepts. Substancelessness constitutes the middle way, and this in other words is a middle way. Yeah, so that is the main teaching of the Buddha. So this is in different way is presented in the dedicatory verse as well. Nagarjuna's philosophy consists principally of two aspects. The first aspect is an exposition of a concept of reality, that is, can be regarded as Sunyata or Pratityasamutpada or even middle way, according to which fundamental reality has no firm core and does not consist of independent substantial components, but of two body systems of material or immaterial bodies that reciprocally affect each other. So two things are, recognized here. One is material things, the other is immaterial, right? So when you talk about reality or existence, it is a functioning of this both. Okay, but underneath both these material and immaterial bodies or immaterial things, there is no fundamental core, there is no firm core. This concept of reality is diametrically opposed to one of the key concepts of traditional Indian metaphysics, Swabhava or own being. It is very clear if you, read his book, that again and again in different chapters he's speaking against this concept of own being, individuality, or self-nature, self-characteristics of anything, any dharma or any existence. The second aspect is an answer to the inner contradictions of four extreme concepts of reality that are not exhaustively presented, but only indicated in principle. Four extreme concepts of reality presented here in terms of substantialism, subjectivism, holism, instrumentalism, but also conveyed in terms of this four tetralemma in logic, Chatushkoti. Nevertheless, it is easy to recognize the systems of thought to which these indications relate. This is important as it is from this recognition that we can identify those aspects of our extreme metaphysical positions that make it impossible for us to recognize the nature of reality. Okay, so the nature of reality as it is and our understanding of it is completely two different things. One is our own, understanding that is based on our imagination, logic, superimposition, everything. And one is the real nature of reality. This is not only a debate within the traditional metaphysics of India. I relate these four extreme propositions to the substantial, subjective, holistic, and instrumentalist modes of thought found in the modern world. In order to effectively undermine these modes of thought, one first has to recognize them as such. Therefore, without any claim to completeness, I will give a brief outline of these four modes of thought. So what does he mean when he talks about substantialism, subjectivism, holisticism, and instrumentalism? He's providing some brief description here with regard to each concept. So by substantialism, he means that substance is something that has independent existence. So when you talk about substantialism, it is basically connected to this idea of swabhava, own being, swabhava. In Europe, substantialism is at the center of traditional metaphysics, beginning with pre-Socratic philosophers such as Parmenides and Heraclitus, two critics of substantial thought, through Plato up to Immanuel Kant. According to traditional metaphysics, substance or own being is something that has independent existence, something unchangeable, eternal, and existing by itself. Okay, so if something that exists by itself, it doesn't need any support from anything else. Okay, so it is there from the beginning. It should be there. It is unchangeable. Even if you consider, for example, in some philosophical system, there is this idea of atta or soul that is there. It is something that continues life after life, existence after existence. So this is something that is denied, in Buddhist thought, especially in Nagarjuna's philosophy. Substance is the underlying basis for everything else, non-material foundation of the world in which we live. So this is the idea that is upheld by those believing in the substantialism. Plato made a distinction between two forms of being, particularly in the second part of his Parmenides. He distinguished between, on the one hand, singular objects which exist exclusively through participation, and insofar as this is the case, they have no own being. And on the other hand, ideas that do have an own being. Traditional metaphysics adopted this dualism from Plato. So singular objects here referring to the kind of force or objects that do not really function by themselves, right? So their existence or their functioning is their functioning takes place only in relation to other objects. Which exist exclusively through participation. So this is one aspect. The other aspect is said to be that ideas that do have an own being. So probably just in ideas, you have this discussion of own being, swabhava, not in terms of their real true existence. Traditional metaphysics adopted this dualism from Plato. An independent own being is characterized in traditional metaphysics as something that, as an existing thing, is not dependent on anything else. So that is by Descartes. When you talk about own being, it should be something that is existing by itself without any support from anything else. Existing by itself, subsisting through self, which is completely unlimited by others and free from any kind of foreign comment. Spinoza, and exists of itself without anything else. In traditional metaphysics, the highest substance was often understood as God or as a divine being. The highest substance is regarded as God. That is permanent, that is there, that exists without any support from anything else. Since Kant's so-called Copernican revolution, the primary question of philosophy is no longer to know reality, but rather to know mind or the source of perception and knowledge. So here there is a shift in terms of inquiry since the time of Kant. It says that the focus then is not with regard to what exactly is reality, but the focus is, the source of knowledge, source of your perception. How do you know it? Who exactly knows? And how is it known? For this reason, the traditional metaphysics has lost ground in the modern world. In fact, the central concepts of the traditional metaphysics, such as being, substance, reality, essence, and so forth, had been replaced by the reductionist modes of thought of modern sciences. Now, atoms, elementary particles, energy, fields of force, laws of nature, and so on are seen as the fundamental ground for everything else. So this is something that is, accepted in this system of thought, that what is functioning, underlying the reality of existence, is these things, different atoms, elementary particles, energy, and so on. And this is second idea, subjectivism. By subjectivist modes of thought, I understand the turning of attention to the subject that resulted from the changes created by René Descartes. According to this doctrine, consciousness is that which is primarily existent, and everything else is merely content or a form or a creation of that consciousness. So you'd find that if you are familiar with different schools of Buddhist thought, this is very much similar to the idea of Yogacara school of thought. In the Yogacara, its another name is Vijñapti Matra school. Vijñapti Matra means consciousness only. They focus that only the consciousness is real, is true. So all your knowledge, all your experiences are just a kind of a reflection within your consciousness. So in a way, they say that, for example, all this is mind-made. All this is, made in your consciousness. All these are just perception. The high point of this kind of subjectivism is represented by the idealism of Berkeley. The ideas of Kant can be considered as a moderated subjectivism or idealism, since René Descartes' subjectivity or self-awareness has become the fulcrum for modern philosophy of thought, lending evidential proof and certainty of reality. This view has been continually brought into doubt by the modern physical sciences. However, these doubts have not led to a new and complementary concept of reality, but to a calamitous separation between philosophy and the modern physical sciences. It has served only to sharpen that dualism that preoccupies modern thought. According to the physicist P.C.W. Davies, electrons, photons, or atoms do not exist. They are nothing but models of thought. So the difference between the first type of idea, substantialism, and the second one, subjectivism, is that in the first school of thought, this discussion, relative existence is analyzed into these fundamental particles or energies, whereas in this category, they are also regarded nothing but models of thought. So this is the idea of this subjectivism. And now the third one, this is called holism. This is the view that an organic or integrated whole has a reality independent of and greater than the sum of its parts. This third approach tries to avoid the calamitous either or scheme of the first two approaches by fusing subject and object into one whole, such that there are no longer any parts, but only one identity. All is one. That whole is made absolute and is mystified. So you do not differentiate between subjectivity and objectivity, or parts and whole. You do not differentiate in any way. You just say that all is just one. It is just one truth that is functioning in different ways. Everything is included. Everything is representative of just one single force. It becomes an independent unity that exists without dependence on its parts. Wholeness is understood as something concrete, as if it were an object of experience. As a philosophical approach found in great periods of European history of philosophy, this view is connected with names like Thomas Aquinas, Leibniz, Schelling. In quantum physics, holism is represented by David Bohm. The last one is called instrumentalism. The fourth approach consists of refuting or ignoring the existence of subject and object. In this, as opposed to the third one, where both subject and object are included as one, in this one, both are rejected. Instead of favoring either one or the other or the two together, this metaphysical approach refutes them both. The search for reality is, according to this viewpoint, insignificant or meaningless. The search for reality is meaningless. Instrumentalism is very modern, intelligent, and sometimes somewhat captious. It is difficult to disengage from it. As an extension of subjectivism, it consists of regarding thinking as thinking in models, which is regarded as a working with information without concern as to what phenomena the information is about. It inherits this problem from subjectivism, about which the philosopher Donald Davidson wrote, "Once one makes the decision for the Cartesian approach, it seems that one is unable to indicate what one's proofs are evidence for." So basically, what it means is that it is a collective term that denotes a variety of scientific approaches. They have the common feature of considering the totality of human knowledge, including scientific constructs, statements, and theories, as not at all or sometimes merely, not primarily, realistic reproductions of the structure of reality. Rather, it considers them to be the result of humans' interactions with nature for the purpose of establishing theoretically and practically successful models. So basically what it means is that when you ignore this subject-object duality, it is neither this nor that. So you make use of everything, everywhere, depending on the needs. You approach this reality from all different perspectives and you fulfill your functioning, right? Without giving too much attention to this subject-object duality, because in any case, they are not real or fundamental according to this view. For instrumentalism, theories are not a description of the world, but are an instrument for a systematic classification and explanation of observations and for the predictions of facts. So you can always only predict the facts. So you make use of all different approaches. The instrumentalist approach is outlined by the experimental physicist Anton Zeilinger. Zeilinger stated in an interview, in classical physics, we speak of a world of things that exist somewhere outside and we describe their nature. In quantum physics, we have learned that we have to be very careful about this. Ultimately, physical sciences are not sciences of nature, but sciences of statements about nature. Nature itself is always a construction of mind. Niels Bohr once put it like this: there is no world of quantum, there is only a quantum mechanical description. So what all this amounts to say is that what exactly is reality is outside of one's knowledge. So all kinds of approaches, all kinds of theories are just some descriptions, some theories, some statements. So it is like, I think, fingers pointing towards moon. All these are just different approaches, different explanations, different theories, or probably imaginations. Because what exactly it is, as they are saying here, that nobody knows. Is it because it cannot be known, or is it because what we think it is actually not that? So therefore, here now he brings up the discussion of Nagarjuna and wants to discuss it, in relation to this Chatushkoti idea, fourth tetralemma, that exist, does not exist, both exist and does not exist, neither exist nor does not exist. So it is said that in logic, in philosophy, basically these are the four fundamental approaches that are used. Any questions so far? Probably it is appearing to be a bit difficult, I think, for you to understand, but if you want, I can send this article also to you, because here I have marked certain important passages. After the discussion, probably you can go through this essay by yourself to have a better understanding.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or yeah, you are welcome. So it would be also good actually if you had enough time to go through this essay beforehand, right? make your own note. Probably you did not have that time, I guess. Okay, so let us continue reading the subsequent passages. Nagarjuna presents these four extreme concepts of reality in a scheme that is in Sanskrit called Chatushkuti and in Greek Tetralemma. So there are Chatushkuti because four viewpoints, four statements, four stands. In a short form, they can be expressed as follows. Things do not arise substantially. One, either out of themselves. Two, nor out of something else. Three, nor out of both. Four, nor without a cause. So you have these four options only. If something comes to exist, either it should be, existing on its own without any causes and conditions, like the concept of God, that he doesn't need any external force, an external cause for him to exist. He is the creator, right? He has the ability to create the entire universe. But when you ask the question about the causes for the creation of God, it is always say that he doesn't need any external force to be created. So this is one possibility, that things should arise either out of itself, right? And the second position says that either or it should have some external forces, some other causes for it to exist. Or it can have both or neither. So this is presented here in a negative order. Things do not arise substantially either out of themselves. So you have this one possibility that is negated here, right? Second possibility, probably out of something else. It is like you have a base made of clay. So you need to have clay to make a base or a jar. And this is also negated here. So when first and second are negated, automatically the third one is negated. If it is not self-caused, if it is not other caused, both self and other caused are negated, not out of both. Fourthly, if when this both are negated, that means it is neither by this nor by that. But then you talk about existence, you talk about things functioning, things existing. Does it mean that it is without a cause? No, it is also negated. Because if you accept this, it means that things are happening abruptly without reason. Anything can happen anywhere without any logical reason. And it is like you are going to have jackfruit in mango tree, right? So behind this scheme, there are, as mentioned above, four concepts of reality that can be related to substantial, subjective, holistic, and instrumentalist modes of thought in the modern world. So these four tetralemma, this author is associating with these four concepts: substantialism, subjectivism, holisticism, and instrumentalism, as discussed above. It would be difficult to find a modern person who does not in one way hold one of these four extreme views. This shows that Nagarjuna's philosophy is very up to date. So the author is saying that if you really truly analyze, you'd find that, you know, people believe, you know, in any of these theories or any of these ideas, okay, with regard to their own existence and with regard to the functioning of the world. They are either accepting the first one, second one, third one, or fourth one. Nagarjuna did not refute the substantial modes of thought in order to end up in subjectivism, even though this is often claimed against him. So now here the question is, when he is denying the first one, that, you know, things do not arise substantially out of themselves, is he negating substantialism completely? So what it says here is that when he is refuting the substantial modes of thought in order to end up in subjectivism, yeah, so when you are rejecting the first one, necessarily you are going to you know, fall into the second one, even though this is often claimed against him. He's not really doing that, and we come to know it only later. Nor did he refute the either or mode of thought in order to end with a view of holism, identity, or wholeness. So when he's negating the first two, he's not accepting the third one, which some benevolent interpreters say of him. Nor did he refute holism in order to end up at instrumentalism, as is believed by many modern interpreters in Limitation of the Philosopher, Ludwig Wittgenstein. Nagarjuna does not fall into any of these extremes, because these are the exact four extreme metaphysical concepts that he systematically refutes. So what it also tells us is that when you read about Nagarjuna's theories in different, you know, in the writings of different modern scholars or authors, you may find that when they are explaining Nagarjuna's refutations of these 4 points, probably they take side of any of these 4 theories, 4 metaphysical concepts that they would explain, you know, that probably Nagarjuna is siding with one of these. Okay, so that is the danger. So now here the author is actually warning that he is actually refuting all these 4 options. So if you find any discussions that, you know, tells that Nagarjuna is actually, when refuting one, he is accepting the other, so that should not be, you know, taken as true. Already in the very first verse of the Mula Madhyamika Karika, he points out not only the dilemma but the whole tetralema of our thinking. That verse states, neither from itself, nor from another, nor from both, nor without a cause, does anything, whatever, anywhere arises. So this is very briefly speaking, this is the statement that he made, that neither from itself, not from another, nor from both, nor without a cause, does anything, whatever, anywhere arises. This verse can be understood as the principal statement of the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the refutation of the 4 extreme metaphysical views which cannot be reconciled with the dependent arising of things. If this is the case, the remainder of the MMK would be merely a clarification of this first verse. Therefore, this requires careful examination. So, what the author points out here is that if this is the fundamental statement that Nagarjuna, you know, made with regard to the existence or reality, the entire MMK text, Mula Madhyamika Karika, in all different chapters actually providing further exposition of this theory. So in that case, it is very important that we understand what it exactly means, right? What is the assertion made by this verse? That nothing can be found, that there is nothing, that nothing exists? Was Nagarjuna denying the external world? Did he wish to refute that which evidently is? Did he want to call into question the world in which we live? Did he wish to deny the presence everywhere of things that somehow arise? If by arise we understand the notion of the empirical arising of things, then we are obliged to argue that if a thing does not arise out of itself, it must arise out of something else. So we should ask, what is the significance of the concept to arise? So now the writer of this article is trying to bring our attention towards this idea of this concept of arising, rather than these 4 different approaches. He's saying that when you talk about things arising out of itself, arising out of other causes, or out of both, or without a cause, fundamentally you are talking about arising of something. So the way we understand this idea, this concept, arising, what does it exactly mean? So we need to be first clear about what we mean by arising, right? In another text, Nagarjuna himself gives some indication of how to understand this concept. He writes in his work, Yukti Shastika 19, that which has arisen dependently on this, and that has not arisen substantially. Swabhavataha. So he's making a point here, that which has arisen dependently on this, and that has not arisen substantially. So this is his idea that now here the discussion is with regard to arising of things. So when you talk about arising, it says that if you are talking about arising in terms of arising on this and that, arising depending on this and that means based on causes and conditions, you cannot really regard it as arising substantially. That is what it means here. Why is that? Because it doesn't have its own substantial existence. It is like yeah, so this example, I think probably it is going to be appropriate. Now, in the Abhidhamma tradition, for example, there is this among many other similes. One simile that is provided is that when you play a guitar, the sound that comes out of guitar, does this sound exist in the string, in the physical part? Where does it exist? And if it is, if the sound is arising, based on all these things put together, right? When you have a guitar with strings properly tied up, and then you move them in a particular way so that it creates a particular sound, this sound does not have its own existence. It does not have its substantial existence. Out of something else, as causes and conditions, something else, that is sound in this case, is produced. So that is what it means here, that which has arisen dependently on this and that has not arisen substantially. You cannot talk of it in terms of substantial origination. What has not arisen substantially, how can it literally be called a reason. Now, if it has not arisen substantially, can you really talk of it in terms of a reason? So now actually here it is striking our normal thoughts or normal ideas with regard to arising, non-arising concepts. We have some specific ideas. These theories questioning our original ideas of arising, non-arising of things. In other words, if you look at the previous section, it says that we need to first understand what does it mean by arising. Is it something that we understand, generally, that is what it is referring to, or there can be something more, something different, something else? That which originates due to a cause and does not abide without certain conditions, but disappears when the conditions are absent, how can it be understood as to exist? So this is the point he is making here. When you talk of arising of something, if it is arising out of something else, out of some causes and conditions, and when those conditions are not present, it is disappearing. Can you really talk of it in terms of existing? Does it really exist? By the concepts of arising and exist, Nagarjuna does not mean the empirical but the substantial arising or existence. So this also you have to keep in mind, that when he's talking about arising and existing, he's talking in terms of substantial arising and existence, not in the empirical sense. When we say that this exists, I have this, I exist, I am living, all this is true in the practical sense, empirical sense. Here the discussion is with regard to the fundamental reality, fundamental existence, ultimate reality. So with this, I think probably we can end our discussion here today, because it is almost 11 o'clock. The next class probably we will be continuing the discussion. But if you have time, please go through this article so that it would be easier to discuss. You also can take part in the discussion. I think that would be interesting. Any question or remark?
No, teacher.
Okay. So there will be two things in the next class. One is a presentation, and also the continuation of this discussion that we are having based on this article, right? Yes. So when you have time, go through this essay. If you cannot finish the entire essay, the pages that we have covered so far, you can look at these pages, few pages, and make your own notes. If you have some questions, you can raise the questions, or you can provide your own thoughts and remarks. Okay. Okay, then if there is no question or remark, I think we can end our class here today. See you in the next class. Bye bye.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.